You're muted.
Hello, are you hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Sorry about that phone ringing there. This is the webinar, the agenda, what we will follow this evening. We're glad to have DG Louis Weaver from 7 to 20. Is he on as yet? Anjali? Can somebody help me in the participants?
Yes, Louis is there.
Yes, he is, Mike.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Dee. Good afternoon. We're going to have you up early with comments. We are expecting DG Sonia Alain from 7 to 30. After that, we're going to have our district Rotaract representative, Mackinson Pierre Louis from 7 to 20. Speak to us a little bit about Rotaract's role. I'll give a little overview of our district disaster planning activities. And then we'll get down into the meat of things where we help Rotary and Rotaract clubs planning for disaster. And that will be divided into 3 sections. We're going to talk about actions that we take before the disaster, and PP Earnott and PP Jacqueline will be doing that. And then Claude Sereno from Haiti will be giving us some impressions of actions that clubs take during a disaster, using the Haitian earthquake as an example. Then after that, we'll be speaking about the long-term recovery efforts, the things we do after a disaster. And AG Ken Strong from the Bahamas will be speaking to us about that. We're very glad to have our great dear friend from DNA RAG, PDG Phil Lustig, and he'll talk a little bit about the role of DNA RAG and how we can all participate. And then PDG Stephen Rampoop from 7 to 30 will be wrapping up by some information on how opportunities for personal development in disaster management. We have a full program this afternoon, so we're going to leave question and answer to the end of things, and let's proceed right away. DG Louis,
Yeah.
it's great for you to here this evening. We remember all your great support in this. Would you like to bring us greeting?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Good evening, fellow Rotarians. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Fellow Rotarians, we need to know our risk with any disaster. That can happen when we have to prepare and when we have our disaster plan ready. For all disaster, we must have an emergency plan, even for a simple situation as power outages. We must have a plan ready to work with. Understand which disaster can happen in your community. Know what to do to be safe to mitigate the damage. Take action to increase your preparedness. Participate in community resilient planning. Increase knowledge of safety policies and procedure. Build moral and trust, demonstrating a commitment to safety and well-being. Enhance organizational coordination and communication on preparedness and continuity of operations. Reduce a disaster effect including injuries and loss of life, properties of inventory damage, and financial loss for business disruption. Strengthen the relationship with local emergencies responders and community leaders to reach common understanding of community risk, needs, and capacity. In our situation, we have to be more prepared for our hurricane season that we know we have to deal with every year. Here are some points. Know your hurricane risk. Make an emergency plan. Know your evacuation plan. Review importance documents. Check tech ready. Have enough supply for your household, including medications, disinfectant supply, mask, pet supply. After the hurricane, you need these supplies for days or even weeks. Recognize warnings and alerts. Stay safe during the hurricane. Hold discussion and drills to explain the plans and policies. Conduct, conduct exercise with your group and increase your readiness. Test your emergency communication plan. Save your phone calls for emergencies. Phone systems are often down or busy after a disaster. Use text messages or social media to communicate with family and friends. Take care of your body and talk to someone if you are feeling upset. The threat of a hurricane can add additional stress. Emergency supply kit. Emphasize your necessity for everyone to have some basic supply on hand to survive at least 3 days in an emergency when an emergency occurs. Make your supply kits in easy and inexpensive. Many items are already to be in your home or can found at local grocery store, pharmacy, or hardware store. Highlight that kits should include items such as non-perishable food, water, a battery powered radio, extra flashlight, and batteries. Be sure to consider where these specialty items you need, such as prescription medication, extra pair of glasses, infant formula, and diapers and pet food. Discuss the need to consider storing supplies in several locations. You should locate your supplies somewhere you can grab them quickly. We have to have our disaster plan ready. Let us serve to change life, enjoy fellowship, and feel proud to be Rotarian.
Changer des vies. Et puis amusons-nous avec la camarade.
So great to have you. DG Sonia, are you on? So great for you to be here. I should let listeners know that we're gathered here in such a fulsome force this afternoon because so when we were discussing ideas for this webinar, DG Sonia heard about it and was very clear at the time that 7030 would be part of this. So DG Sonia, so good to see you this afternoon.
Thank you so much, PDG Michael. DG Louis just talked about emergency, even a power outage. I'm in the midst of a power outage where I am driving to my backup supply. So allow me to just be brief with my remarks. It is an absolute privilege for District 7030 to be a part of this webinar on such a timely topic. Disasters aren't only hurricanes, they can happen, disasters can happen at any time, and we need to be prepared as we are the people who lead the way in disaster preparedness in our region. So I look forward to what this webinar brings for our districts and for our members. I know that it will be full of information to be disseminated to the clubs, and I look forward to watching this roll out. As our two districts are so close, it is important that we collaborate on these types of webinars for the synergy that makes us strong when disasters take place. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best. I have to jump off shortly to go on to another meeting at 7:30. So when you see me disappear, please, I am on to the world of Rotary business in District 7030. Good evening and have a successful webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, DG Sonia. We also bring greetings from PDG David Edwards, who is the chair of our Caribbean Regional Disaster grouping, which brings together 7020, 7030, 7040, and 4250 in Belize, and also closely synergy with the groups in Florida, the districts in Florida. I'm very pleased this afternoon to see that we have a very attentive and very faithful visitor who has always supported us. And this is past Rotary International Director Bob Stewart. Bob is currently chairman of the Disaster Network of Assistance Rotary Action Group, which PDG Phil will speak about later. And Bob is also chair of the Rotary Action Group Council. Welcome, Bob. Good to see you.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to see so many active Rotarians participate in a webinar of this nature.
Having this trying from year to year and get better every year. We have a fantastic team working together, Bob. Now we'll hear from our district Rotaract representative, Mackinson Pierre Louis, right, who has been a tremendous supporter. Mackinson took over the DRR role of July 1, but I know from February, he was in contact with us about what Rotaract could do to improve disaster preparedness. And he has been very instrumental in putting this program together. DRR Mackinson, let's hear from you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Dear Rotarians and Rotaractors from District 7020 and District 7030 on the call, good evening. It is a great opportunity to have you all tonight for this great webinar that I'm sure that will be fantastic. I want to take the time to thank the Rotary District 7020 disaster preparedness team for taking the time to work with the Rotaract district on that. It is definitely one of the greatest things when we can work together as a district, as Rotary and Rotaract. We are one in one family, and definitely when we work together, we'll have greater impact. So I want to remind you all that for us living in the Caribbean, we can testify how important it is to get ready for disasters because they come very often. So that's why the district always take the time to organize this webinar for us every year. So we are going to have a lot of information, I'm sure, and they will be very, very useful. So I wish you all a very good time. And my dear Rotaractors on the call, I hope you'll have a lot of questions because I know you will have to develop your disaster preparedness plan. Please stay ready and be very at it in order to have all the information you need and you want. So I wish you all a very instructive time, and I'm looking forward for the next. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Mackinson, and thank you for all your tremendous help. You've been a fresh breath of air in our sails. I'd like to, for a couple slides now, speak to you about our District 7020 disaster plan. Just a little bit about, so you understand the context. We're going to spend the majority of our time on the club activities, but I'd like to set the scene in terms of what our district does, right? Our district recognizes, there are many risks that we face, right? And we are astounded by the fact that they say that there will be many-fold more climate disasters by the end of this decade. We believe that the best way to respond to a disaster is to have a plan. DG Louis from early in the year was very clear. He sent instructions. He said, Mike, prepare before the storm. Prepare before the storm. And that's what we're doing here this evening. Our district has a long history of helping in disasters. You know, I was looking at the Rotary magazine a couple of weeks ago and saw aspects of disasters in the Caribbean from the early 1980s. Rotary cares about, we care about each other. We care about our members, we care about our communities. So if anybody's affected, we care and we try and respond. As a district, we take many actions and we try to group these actions into actions that we take before the disaster, such as holding a webinar this evening, actions that we do during a disaster, and actions that we take after a disaster. I'd like to explain a couple of highlights of these. Before a disaster, our district maintains an organized and committed district leadership team. If you ever want to see where all the PDGs in our district are, look at the disaster committee. They're always active, always organized, always ensuring that maximum focus is given into monitoring disasters and responding. Our district has a disaster fund, which is funded by part of your club dues, right? And that gives us a rainy day fund to start off in the disasters. And we think that's a good practice. We very much, as a district, promote that we are a regional organization. The same threats that are now facing us as Fred races through the Caribbean from district to district affect us all. And we always try and have a regional focus and to expand that regional focus. That's why I'm glad for PDG David Edwards of the Rotary Regional Disaster to be here with us. Our district maintains a disaster preparedness committee, which I have the privilege to be part of, and we facilitate clubs in having those plans to be prepared for disasters. As a district, we maintain strong relations with other aspects of Rotary, all right, with the Disaster Network of Assistance Rotary Action Group and other right? And we have a wealth of resources to help clubs and individuals respond to disasters and plan for disasters. So we have those resources on our district website, which we will speak to. During the disasters, God forbid that it should happen, our district immediately convenes a disaster-specific committee. The DG will typically appoint a past district governor or himself to convene that committee even before the disaster strikes. I remember Dorian, when the district committee was meeting 2 days before the hurricane hit the Bahamas. In that committee, during the disaster, we maintain contacts with clubs on the ground and an island coordinator who is usually an assistant governor or other person that can coordinate all the information news from that island. As a district, we pay a great emphasis in making sure we communicate to Rotary and external parties what our situation is, and we immediately activate fundraising mechanisms promptly when a disaster occurs. As a district, we make sure that whatever record keeping and needs to be done, we typically receive large numbers of inquiries when we have a disaster. We want to maintain contact and follow up with everyone. And we help in assisting in channeling the required resources to the clubs in need. After a disaster, perhaps that's when our district gets most busy. We continue the response actions as needed. We are always devising efforts to help clubs with resources, encouragement, whatever the clubs will, by keeping close contact with our clubs that are going through disasters. We try to maintain a helpful, encouraging, responsive, and accountable systems to help clubs formulate their projects, to help their communities and provide assistance for them. We move supplies pre-positioned or otherwise to the disaster hit areas, wherever that is possible. And we channel financial help to clubs to sustain their projects, to repair their communities. We try as a district that we keep meticulously track of all expenditures and have effective stewardship reporting of all projects. And we always learning from disasters. So we keep on noting these points so that we can improve our response further as we go forward. As a part of our after recovery activities, we help clubs formulate ideas and plans. We reach out to clubs that are affected by disasters, ask them how they can assist with their ideas, help them formulate plans, review these plans with them to the point that we think we can approve the expenditure of resources on them. We encourage and assist clubs with whatever project implementation and helping them to close out projects to ensure that the goals of these projects are adequately met. These are all activities that our district recovery committee sustains. Our district has further resources on all our activities at this website link. It's on our District 7020 website. Please review that. There's a wealth of information. If you have information that you think would be useful to Rotary clubs, please contact us. We'd like to include it as well. So thank you very much. And I'd like to now pass over discussions to what the clubs can do before a disaster. PP Earnout, PP Jacqueline, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Mike. Jacqueline, are you also there?
Should I bring up this? Are you seeing the?
Mike, I guess you have not seen your WhatsApp messages. We just suggested that it would be a good idea if I share exactly the same presentation, but just my sheets, so I can click them. So I am going to try to share my screen right now, and that should be the correct screen. Here we go. Do you see the sheets? Wonderful.
Yes, we do.
Thank you. Okay. What we're going to do now, we're going to briefly have a chat about the emergency plan and how to draft it. But we divided it into tasks. I'm going to explain the sheets, and I'm going to share some tips and tricks with the help of the sheets. And we have Jacqueline with a wealth of knowledge and unfortunately experience, who will be able to, I'm sure she will be able to answer any questions that you might have that require more detail. You know that she works for FEMA. She knows more about this than I can ever imagine. So that is how we would like to do it. Please raise your hands when you have any questions, and we'll try to do that. And I see that we have a first question already from Kenneth. Kenneth, go ahead.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kenneth O'Brien. I'm from District 7030. I'm from the Rotary Club of Portsmouth in Dominica. I work for the Dominica Electricity Service, and I've encountered a real massive disaster, which was Hurricane Maria. One question I had before we continue is, in the event of all communications being cut off, what plans are in place to contact persons if that ever happens, like all communication towers are down and you have no other form? What plans do you have to contact other persons in different districts?
Thank you for that question. Jacqueline, do you want to take that? I have also some thoughts about our experience during Irma or after Irma. But Jacqueline, are you? I can see you, unfortunately. Okay, I cannot see Jacqueline and I do not hear her. So thank you, Kenneth, for that question. I'm just going to share what I did after a hurricane knocked out telephone and radio. And that was very simple. I had a book that I carried around when I was going walking and driving all over the island. And everyone that I ran into that I knew or that I didn't know, I asked them about other people, and that's what a lot of people in our situation did. We drove around. You talk a lot to people, and you tried to get information about your friends and your neighbors. Your neighbors may have been out already. And maybe they have more knowledge. So I collected a lot of information in my notebook, one of those big blue ledgers, and that contained at one point a wealth of knowledge, and it's actually a sort of a diary. What we also did is we simply drove around to people and check if they were home. We did not at the time have any strategic plan or communication plan to do that. In the plan of my club that you may have received, we now have clustered some of our members that live together, or live in the same area, so they know where those other members are. Some people were living a block away from each other and didn't even know it, so they know where to go. And then we also, what else did we do? We have a specific moment. I believe our meetings are on a Tuesday. The first Tuesday noon after a hurricane hits, we meet at our regular location. At least that's in the plan. And that is also a way to find out if your club members are okay. It's not foolproof.
We're going to. We're going to hold questions to the end. We have a full program, right?
Correct. My apologies.
Question. Could you continue with your presentation?
Yes. We're going to talk to you tonight about paperwork, putting letters, numbers, and words on paper. Some of you may know I'm a lawyer. I'm used to writing a lot, and some of you might not be. So we're going to try to help you a little bit to put this on paper. What the intention is to motivate you to start drafting a plan and to give you some tips and tricks on what can work for a plan like this. These are some resources. First tip, don't try to invent the wheel. Use the templates, look at the plans drafted by other clubs, and take solace in the fact that in most countries in our district, copyright laws are not strictly enforced, so plagiarize if you think it's necessary, it's useful. A brief word on why we make these plans. The main reason my club has an emergency plan is to protect our members and our assets. We lost a lot of 20 years of club memorabilia in Irma. Most of our electronic equipment was gone. Why? We did not have a member designated to pick up electronic equipment that we had stored in the basement of a beachfront hotel, which maybe could have been smart. But even worse, other clubs have lost members, not because those members died or had to focus on their business, but because those members did not feel supported. As in, they have never heard from their club after a disaster. And after, for instance, they lost their roof. Nobody even called after the phones were working again. So those people left your club, left some of the clubs in our district. If you have clear, distinct roles within the club, and if you have a communication plan, that could have been avoided. Some clubs go even further and prepare their club's response for their whole area. That's fine. If you want to focus on helping out, please do. As far as we know, there are no formal guidelines on what to do or what to plan for in case of a disaster. Clubs are autonomous in drafting their plans about what they want to do and how they plan to proceed. Now, for the presidents among you, for a Rotary or Rotaract club being prepared for disasters, it helps a lot if you appoint a disaster chair or disaster preparedness chair, preferably also a committee. You can motivate them to educate themselves on the matter of disaster preparedness and disaster management. A lot of us here have already taken courses in disaster management. I took one via Coursera. It was very interesting. I learned a lot. And PDG Stephen Ramrup, I understand, will talk about that later as well. One of the benefits of drafting a plan is that it forces us to think about the risks, the options, and the possible solutions. And I can tell you that it's better to think about that when you're having a drink around the table with a committee compared to when you're sitting on the floor of your living room looking up at the stars through where your roof used to be. I'm focusing a lot on hurricanes because that is something that I have experienced, but of course there are a lot of other disasters that we need to prepare for, and a lot of disasters, other disasters that unfortunately are real risks in our district. Yeah, you need to know what to plan for. You need to make a risk assessment. There's been something about that in previous slides already. In other words, just draft a chapter solely focusing on assessing the risks. Now, you want your emergency plan to be complete, but not look like a phone book. And I have a visual aid. This is the phone book of St. Martin. It's pretty thick. I was used to having more thicker phone books, but it's not the intention of a plan to be way too much that no one will read it. If you include an executive summary, pretty much half a page with some bullet points on what the disaster plan does and what it advises, that helps a lot already, and people will know that they have it. They can then look it up later if they want more details. It is my hope that my club members have a copy of our emergency plan in a Ziploc bag in their disaster kits. And I think they should, because ours has a lot of details about resources. You can use the plans that you have made for your club also for your own family. You can use them for your business. You can use them for other organizations. Our club's emergency plan was based on a emergency plan of our local utilities company. And I realized after Irma that my business did not have an emergency plan. We do have one now. You can use the plan to educate your members. I like to put a checklist of helpful items in the plan. As you probably have noticed during hurricane season, a lot of businesses hand out checklists. It seems standard, everyone does it, but it is extremely helpful if you are short on time and realize that you need to go shopping and you need to go shopping quickly. An experience that I would like to share. Prior to Irma, I was wearing a suit. I was walking around with other guys wearing suits on a pile of sand, trying to fill as many sandbags as we could. We were not prepared. And if I had a checklist that mentioned sandbags, I would have. Communication. You want to know if your members are vulnerable, especially if you have elder people in your Rotary club that are living alone and that need medication. That is information that people usually do not really want to share, but it could be helpful. And in making sure they survive. So this is a very touchy subject, but I think it is important to at least try to talk to your members as the disaster chair and try to see which members you really need to look out for immediately after a disaster. A call down list, that is an excellent tool. WhatsApp, that is actually the main tool that we use in our club. And there was a question as well about how to prevent way too many weather notifications. And I've run into that as well. It is quite frustrating if you make a post with information of the National Hurricane Center, details about when something may happen, and you post that in your club's WhatsApp group. And shortly after that, someone forwards another notification drawn with a Sharpie, and everyone looks at that. What we did is to make a separate WhatsApp group, and you can make a WhatsApp group broadcast only. What we did is we made sure that only the disaster chair, the vice president, and the president were allowed to send out messages in that group. I was also notified later that before we had that, members of my club were really annoyed because they had to scroll up or scroll down way too far to get the messages that I had sent when I was the disaster chair, and they thought that those were useful. But yeah, because of all the other chat that goes on, it gets lost. This is simply a list of what your club members have access to. And you will want to know what wonderful materials are actually very closely available to you. Don't be that club. It happened around, actually across from the valley here, the hill opposite me, that had one member. He was stuck in his one-way street for a couple of days because of the amount of fallen trees. We had one member living on exactly the same hill that was not aware of those trees having fallen down, and another one, sorry, that's not true, it's not my club, someone else's club, and another member also living close by, they both had chainsaws. Someone else had the son with a live-in son who owned a backhoe. That could have been wonderful to help that person, but yeah, it didn't happen. Money. If you take a course in disaster management, you will learn to be very careful with sending stuff to a disaster zone. We've all heard stories about water standing at a dock for a year, winter clothes being sent to the Caribbean. Sometimes sending money is a lot better, and you will help rebuild the local economy. So maybe having some money earmarked not only for your own club when you're hit, but also to donate quickly to other areas. Do you know who has some great stories and are excellent guest speakers? Members of your fire department. And those are usually also the people that are involved in disaster management and in emergency operations. I suggest that after you have them as guest speakers, which I highly recommend, make sure to stay in touch with them. Get connections with your local government if you don't have those already. And if you do, have your committee collect data on contacts. Maybe your committee has no direct links for an organization like the Red Cross, but maybe another member sibling might. So try to talk to your members and see, hey, maybe you have some information and network that can be used in the case of a disaster. My apologies, I'm going way too quick. This was the part where I gave the presentation. Jacqueline, do you have anything to add?
Jackie sent a note that she's having technical.
Good evening, everyone. I am back, Mike. Thank you very much. No, I think you did a fantastic job in terms of presenting the information. I do know that as we go on from year to year, that District 7020 is being challenged. And the plan is not a cure-all. I just want to say this. It's just a step in helping and moving you towards ensuring that you and your family and the club has at least a pathway in terms of assisting and directing you forward. So I just want to say that it's important as we go forward, it's important to at least plan for your club and for the families. And that's all I have to add. And thank you, Aaron. You did a fantastic job.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Aaron. That was wonderful. Moving on, we're going to hear from Claude Serino about typical actions that you take during a disaster. Claude could write the book on this subject. PAG Claude, are you on?
Yes, I am. Yeah. Good evening.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah. Okay, Mike. Thank you for having me here with you and to talk about what we could do during a disaster. I believe it is a very interesting part of the action that we should be doing, because most of the time what happens is that people have been hurt or victims, or because they went out too fast during the disaster to find out how the situation is in different areas. So, and this is not a good thing to do, because we have to remind something, that we are not, as Rotarians, we are not first responder. We are there to help the authorities and the organization to come and support the other victims, the other people that have been in that situation. We are not here to be the first responder. So this is why during the disaster, one of the first things we should be doing is to be informed, get informed, and precisely, where is that happening? What is the worst part where the hurricane has been hurting this part of the country, of the region, so that we know exactly what is happening. The first thing is to stay informed, so that you not rush to go and support and give help to anybody that would be in difficulty, because the first responders are there for that. So we have, as a matter of fact, to be informed, get informed, and stay informed, so that during the whole passage of the hurricane or whatever the disaster could be, so that we will know what we could be doing and be prepared to do. And it's very, very important for each Rotarian, each Rotarian to understand that. Don't rush to out trying to know what is happening by taking your car, going anywhere, because the road could be blocked, there could be flooding, there could be any other material, any other sheet metal that because of the wind that could hurt you. So this is the first recommendation I could do. Be informed, stay informed during the passage of the hurricane. And the second step is to, as has been said before, you have been prepared a lot of materials, a lot of kits in order to intervene, in order to give your support to the community after the hurricane. So you have to make sure that all these materials are in place where you did put them before the hurricane, so that you make sure that there is no problem. Because what happened, you could be putting all your kits or the material in one place, and you don't know, maybe the hurricane go at that place, and you don't get access anymore to that kit, to those kits, to the material. So you have to stay informed and make sure that all the preparation, all the kits are in place, so that you would prepare then the response after that, and make sure everything is in place. This is very important, and that we have to do that. It's very important to do that. Make sure that our plan is in place, and that we will be acting right after the And also, as has been recommended before, before the weekend, you have to be in contact and make sure you get that contact with all the different persons in charge of the response, the authorities, the Red Cross, civil protection, the mayor's office, and make sure that we have all this contact information, and that during the passage of the weekend, you make sure that they are available. There is no problem in reaching them by phone, by WhatsApp, or by any other way of communication, so that you can make sure that every human resources are in place. You get contact with them, they can give you information back and forth, so that before you act, you know that all these people are ready to go, and you will be going to support them and give them the most important help that you could be doing. So communication is very, very important, but communication mostly with the person in charge, the person that we have been contacted before, so that you know exactly when and how we will be acting. As soon as we have the information, there is food in an area, there is a roadblock in an area, so they will tell you, because they are already in place. They are the first responder. They will give you the information about what to do and what to do and what to do. If there is a roadblock, you already do not go in that direction. Use another way so that you can come and give the solution. This is a very important step too. And also, as I said, we have to keep being informed of the evolution of the situation, because the situation could change from 1 minute to the other. Maybe there will be some flooding, but the flooding is not important in one place, but maybe after 1 hour, 2 hours is being settling down, and that I can tell you, okay, you can go this way, you can go the other way, that you would not do before, so that you have to stay informed of the evolution of the hurricane, because this is very important, that the way you will be organizing yourself with your people, with the Rotarians, or the people that will be helping you, so that you know exactly what to do and where to do it, and being very, very effective. So this is, I believe, this 4 important things that you should be aware of, so that you don't rush, and I'm repeating myself, don't rush to go out, because you know, okay, people are having problems in that area. If you are not sure of the situation, don't rush to go out. You can call the first responder. You can give the information there. Okay, I've been informed that in some area there is some problem. So would you go there and help? But yourself, as you are only supporting. So we don't have to be the first responder and go out very quickly and not being hurt by the hurricane itself. So, so this is the most important thing to do during the weekend, and then being most effectively prepared for the response right after the weekend. Everything is more or less settled down, and then we can go out with our teams, with our materials, and go in some specific ways in order to help people that have been victims from the weekend. I think that's all I've been for doing any state, and I'm available for any question.
Thank you very much, Claude. We're going to, any questions at this point, or can we take questions at the end when we do all the questions? We're going to press along. Thank you, Claude.
Yeah.
The next section, actions during a disaster, will be by AG Ken Strachan, right? From Bahamas. And AG Ken, are you there? Great, I'm seeing the screen. Go ahead, AG Ken.
Sorry, I had to unmute first. Good evening, everybody. You hear me?
Yes, yes, hearing you well.
Just allow me to share my screen and I will be underway. First of all, let me acknowledge the protocol and thanks for each of you who have taken the time to participate in this session here this evening. I want to say special thanks joining in the session this evening. One of my inspirators in this whole program in Abaco, John Dignan. So thanks to John and his significant other, Susan Witherspoon. A lot has happened because of those two individuals. So I want to take this opportunity to offer my gratitude and thanks to them. So as I move into my presentation, I'm giving a little overview of the occurrence after the storm. Okay, just 1 second, got a screen in the way there. Okay, the Rotary Bahamas response post-Hurricane Dorian, we found that we ended up with something that no other nation can say they had the pleasure of dealing with. And Jacqueline, I see you smiling. Yes, in your working FEMA, I don't know that Katrina did as much as what Dorian did to us here in the Bahamas, not just Abaco, in the Bahamas. So the first course of action immediately was to make the assessments. Clearly, you, PAG Mike spoke about the formation of the committee to deal with the aftermaths of such storms. We assessed the needs of the residents, and Rotary aided in the first couple of days of sourcing food packages and supplies with other necessities, not only for the island of Abaco, but also for New Providence and Eleuthera, as well as Spanish Wells. Reason being, a number of impacted individuals had to be evacuated from the island of Abaco to these neighboring islands, just seeking shelter. We recognize that we went in search in the first instance of a whole club. And Claude, I just heard you speak about, and also in not knowing where your Rotarians are, not paying attention to them. That was important. We pretty much had lost the entire membership of the Rotary Club of Abaco during this ordeal. But special thanks to each of them, led by IP immediate past President Dwayne Wallace, who, along with the others on the ground, past President Kerry and others, they held the reins and did their best to hold that club in place in the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian. And what we did as a Rotary body during those evacuation exercises, there were registration stations which was set up. One firstly at Odyssey International Airport. Space was made available for evacuees coming there, and also at Odyssey Dock because some persons were being ferried in via boat here in New Providence as well as to the other islands. And so we, Rotary in the first instance, assisted in lending support and moving resources and people around to try to see who was available, who was missing, and where we were going. We worked in partnership with the government and other stakeholders. The government system experienced significant challenges. The administrative building on the island of Abaco was overtaken by persons fleeing from the area of the mud. The mud was one of the largest community in the island of Abaco, the Mud and Pigeon P. Post-Dorian, the population was in and around 14 to 20,000 on the entire island of Abaco. And so that led to significant challenges. Even those who were leading in various departments in government, they too suffered challenges and were hard pressed to deal with what was going on around them. Security elements came in, and thanks nations represented here this evening for those of you who sent manpower to assist in the security elements post-Dorian, as there certainly was looting, and there was a lot of persons unaccounted for, trying to find persons' bodies, managing and distribution of supplies. Rotary went to work here in coordinating with global organization for support and funding. In the first instance, we received, coming out of Texas, 2 field hospitals, mobile field hospitals. I'll tell you a little bit more about what happened with those coming in, but they came in, that was about a $500,000 injection, and to help to go into communities of Abaco to provide some level of clinical support to small and minor injuries. The Rotary Disaster Committee immediately afterward was formed. Organized structure led by Chairman Brian PAG, Brian Knowles. Team of us, also part of the team. We were fortunate to have immediate past International President Barry Rassin as part of that team. We recognized the challenge with communications on the island. When I tell you that communications was lost, it was lost. I personally was looking for family members of mine, and we were looking for days looking for them. And you know, it was a welcome relief when we got that first phone call. We were at the airport trying to get on a flight to get here, and thank God all of them, amidst the tragedy, came out there with their lives. The communications went down. So the regionals and Rotary clubs globally, Global Medic in Canada came and lent some support with some food provisioning. Salvation Army, we partnered with them, sending pilots of food supplies, again to Abaco, as well as Spanish Wells and Eleuthera. Most of the food supplies, and I will tell you, John and Susan was in their own little corner taking care of more than 3,000 persons after the storm for weeks. And they were our point of contact, along with immediate past President Dwayne and 1 or 2 others, past President Kerry, Desmond Boodle, in trying to keep the wheels rolling, receiving items as we sent over, because it was difficult getting in. There was still problems at the airport, no actual flights was being allowed in, and international support, though they were coming in, it was hard pressed for the law enforcers to seek to try to keep an organization of those things at that particular point. And at the same time, with Abaco, there was Grand Bahama. Grand Bahama suffered similar fate, more specifically in the eastern end of Grand Bahama, High Rock and Sweden Ski. And what we saw in the first instance is some years ago, the Rotary Foundation, Rotary along with Partners Foundation, was able to construct a water resource depot in the western end of Grand Bahama. And I can tell you that particular depot serviced the entire of Grand Bahama for in immediate and long-term aftermath of the storm. Not only did they provide the water, there was jugs, and also filling tanks was transporting water at various locations throughout the island. And at the same time, international support was coming in. Samaritans First, All Hands and Hearts, and others, all were coming in, trying to set in place themselves to see what they were able to do to lend support. And so we went to work as an organization. I'm trying to get into the land. Again, I'm calling on past President Dwayne, who, along with a few members of his club, amidst what they were going through. And let me digress just for a brief moment. What we did as a disaster committee in the first instance, it is very, very important to make sure you take care of your fellow Rotarians. So as it was extremely important so to do, the disaster committee in the first instance, having located each member, sought to provide financial support and assistance to at least dry them out for the foreseeable moment while they try to settle themselves. So that was important, and trying to keep that body together. That worked out to our credit and to our benefits. So some of the things that happened in Grand Bahama, we saw the district supported by 6990 was able to get sustenance into the island of Grand Bahama, East End more specifically, and they embarked on a program of homes, roof restoration, mold remediation, drying out that area of Grand Bahama and Sweden's Key fishing villages, more specifically. And so many, as a matter of fact, the majority of the mariners lost their vessel or was suffered significant damages as a result of the storm. But going back over to the island of Abaco, we partnered, seeing what was taking place in Grand Bahama with the water plant. We immediately formed an alliance with Pure H2O and was able to carve out and construct a portable reverse osmosis plant, which was nestled in a 20-foot container and transported to Treasury Abaco, and was producing more than 15,000 gallons of potable drinking water, which was being drawn from the sea, which serviced many within those affected communities. So as we started to identify projects on the island, we saw something else that was happening. We were getting a lot of incidents of traffic accidents and more so fatalities. Persons were being trapped in vehicles. We were approached by Colin, who at the time led the Treasury Fire Rescue Unit. And we were able to, along with corporate sponsors, purchase what is called a Jaws of Life, an Almatro Jaws of Life system. And coming off that purchase, we went into Abaco, and the several teams throughout the community were able to provide training for them in the use of that equipment. And further, we went immediately into looking at homes and see how we can help. And John played a significant role in this as we found the first 1 to 2 homes. We started to work on those homes, and it was evolving from that point. We were sourcing supplies here in New Providence and had to have those supplies shipped over to the island of Abaco because, of course, there was nothing left, nothing salvageable. Whatever was left was taken and used to try to secure what was on the island, what was not, what didn't float away, because most of the hardware stores was in that newly formed lake that floated most of those stuff out of the main area of Marsh Harbor into the ocean, along with persons and the area of the mud. And so we started to ship items over to Abaco to begin our roof restoration projects. I want to thank corporate sponsors in that regards. What we found was one of the things we said we will do, we will document. We started doing a little small social media excerpts, little videos of what we were doing. And thanks to Mr. Ernest Dean and his family from the Dane Shipping, the Motor Vessel Legacy, as well as the Champion, they had forgiven our fees for shipping of items to that island. Each time we had this container load, this rack loaded between this 20 and 40 foot loaded to go over, that was anywhere from $900 to $1,200. And so we have sent more than 27 loads over already. And so that's the in-kind donation that we were being supported with. We acquired 2 RVs. Those RVs were intended to move through the communities along with UNDP to do home assessments, to see how best we can identify what homes that we can support and working on. And also, as our work progressed, a donor stepped in And I'm saying this so you can get an understanding that people are out there wanting to help. When they see that you are able to do the work, they will knock on your door rather than you knocking on their door. So it's always good to get the message out as to what is really taking place within your particular arena. So we were able to benefit from a $600,000 donation from that donor, which is still today supporting the home restoration. We have finished the restoration in various stages to more than 100 homes since we have started, which affected the lives of over 2,000 individuals. When you do the multiplier effect where some of these persons were staying, 20 persons to one house here and there, and no roof, and migrating to other islands and wanting to get home. We started to get more contributions in. Kelly's came in, gave us a check, $50,000, notwithstanding we were spending money with them. They said, spend it how you see fit. They believed in what we were doing. We were grateful to them for that. And when we thought it couldn't get any worse, but before I go there, we also had a number of students who migrated from Grand Bahama to New Providence and were placed in the Ranfley Home for Children, as the home in in Grand Bahama, my apologies, was destroyed. And the disaster committee made a contribution of $100,000 to support those persons there in the Ranfley Home for Children. We also found a very interesting project, Alder Gates Ministries, which is also a school and a shelter on the island of Babaco. Through the kind contribution of Ruby, we were able to go in and take on the restoration of that location. I'm just going to finish up here and just dive into a little of how we manage the projects. We see, and we have still today been seeing a lot of issues on the island. The mental health issue really has taken root. One of the homes that we repaired in partnership with an NGO, Abaco Strong, in Crown Haven, Abaco. The homeowner, young lady, God rest her soul, with 7 children. She lost her life tragically on Christmas Day. She was killed at that home. We had just finished renovating. Domestic issue, and so that really was a little troubling. We saw several of our homeowners whom we had provided assistance to, and I also pay homage to one of our past presidents, Carlington Ellis Stewart. We were in the middle of restoring his home. He suffered 5 heart attacks and 6 strokes post-Dorian. And he is not alone who've had similar challenges. I've spoken to many of the homeowners who have likewise suffered minor strokes and heart attack. The stress and the pressure of these things are insurmountable. And, it's in talking to and just listening for the most part, really and truly is one of the things that helps these persons who have gone through these traumatic situations. So in the middle of while we were trying to make this all happen, we had this wonderful thing that dropped in our lap. There was COVID-19. So when that dropped in our lap, yes, that just added insult to injuries. So we had to lift and shift in some form or the other. Travel became a little bit restricted. And so we were still able to get our work going with the aid of the strong team that is on the ground, very small team that is on the ground in Abaco. We went through the community, hired a couple of contractors who we managed the projects that they are working on. We also saw that the school students during this COVID initiative had to transition to virtual. Again, corporate sponsors saw what we were trying to do, came in, lender support with almost $200,000, well, actually over $200,000, and we were able to provide support and assistance throughout the Bahamas of more than 800 students with either tablets and Wi-Fi, or MiFi devices, more specifically in the Abaco areas, as they were getting the tablets from other donors, to support the educational requirements while they stayed home and tried to rebuild their lives on that island. I'll tell you this coming Monday, the storm is sitting over us right now, just to the south of us. So barring any unforeseen circumstances, we have a significant contribution to make to the schools, 13 schools in Abaco this coming Monday. So I'm going to shift my screen a little and give you a little bit about how we manage these projects. And so our host tonight, he doesn't say much. He's a quiet giant, but nonetheless, he's powerful in what he does. Mike, yes, is you what I'm talking about. Mike created this wonderful app some time ago. And this wonderful app has allowed us the opportunity to be able to manage the projects that we have undertaken during this initiative. You would have heard me spoke to, and this, I would show you, these are projects that are either in train or have taken effect within the application. And one that I will turn to, I spoke to Aldergates, Aldergates Ministries. So this was one of those projects that I'm getting a feedback. Somebody's mic is open. Okay, the Aldergates Methodist Church. This church is in the center of Marsh Harbor, suffered significant damage during the storm. A grant was prepared to lend support to this, and this is how this is set out, and it's available for anyone in the district to view. We went in there, submitted the grant, all of the contacts. Past President Giles Carey is the point of contact for this location. There's the details relative to what was taking place there. Just increase my screen a little bit so you can see a little bit more of it. And as we move through, we were able to show initially what the budget had looked like, and we did find some hidden challenges along the way, but we were able to get in there and do some work. Sagoma Construction Company partnered with us, provided support with significant reduction in what we would have paid for the works to be done. And so it is populated within the system. And as I scroll through, you can click on any one of these feeds and it will take you over to updates on the project, where what works were taking place and at what stage we were providing reports while the works were taking place. And so just let me go back. And as we went through, there's a geolocation to the project. So you can find that from anywhere using Google Earth. That's the infamous Charles Carey, past president. He inherited about 60 grandchildren since Dorian. Yeah, he's a farmer. So we've got a couple of golden pigs he was able to inherit since the storm. So I'm grateful that he was able to enjoy getting his family back together. And so this is what it looked like. And past President Carey stayed in that structure after the storm in a tent in the church, while his family, and that is the school, that is what was left of the school after the storm. And so we went in there. This is what it looks like now. Work having been carried out. And this is what that school looks like now, work having been carried out. And so we were pleased to lend some support to that, getting that church back in order. Let me take you a little further into this application. I won't be much longer, but I just want to take you through. So that's projects, and now we move over to this wonderful screen known as contract maps. So Here is the island of Abaco, and then just let me increase that size a little bit, which sits just off of Grand Bahama, and you have the ability to view that in maps, or you have the ability to view that in satellite, having clicked on the screen. So every single one of these dots that you see on this island, every single one of them represent a project that we have either completed or currently engaged in. So let me take you just randomly, let's randomly go through. Click on this project here. It opens up the window showing you the, just give me a second. Opens up the window showing you who is the owner of that homes, Alton Sands, and his particulars. He's in Central Pines. It is showing you that what was allocated for the work that we found that we needed to do. In some cases, some persons had gotten support from the DRA and other NGOs. So in collaboration with others, we were able to get stuff done. That was the family car left in the front of the home. It didn't go far, it just stayed there, but it didn't stay upright. And that is what the interior of Mr. Sands' family home came to. So we got in there, did some work inside there. I just need to put some updates in there as to what the final view look like. So I spent a lot of time with this application. As a matter of fact, all of these dots here, I've sat, Mike and I put this together, and I've been actually populating these stuff myself. And so this is another home in Central Pines. Sorry, this one, not Central Pines. This looks like, yes, Tinker. This is in Central Pines. So as you go through, you would be able to see any one of these projects which we have engaged in. This is over here in Murphy Town. Any one of these projects that we have engaged in, and what it looks like in terms of expenditure. We make a note of list of persons who are in the home. This is a home we met the individual living in a tent. That's what we met before we began the work to that place. And that's the same way Pastor Kerry was living inside the church. And so you would find a number of situations like this throughout the community of Abaco. As I move over, we have established a website, which is out there to support, sorry, that is the, hang on, I'm losing one of my screens. So bear with me a second, please. Okay. We have Abaco Relief. Let me see, pull that back up. Abaco Rotary Relief is a website we have out there. Once you click on the website, it brings you to a location. You click on the application form. You populate the details in the form. It transitions to our email and a full registry of information in that form is contained in jot form. As you can see, we have 233 submissions in our portal at this particular time at various stages of work that is taking place. So we can pull up all of that details. So we are running a secondary system along with Mike's system. And then we also, we transfer that information over into our Dropbox. And so for record keeping and the ability to be able to retrieve, we use these various applications as we continue the work that we are carrying on the island of Abaco. And as I come to closure, we were able to, and some of you may have seen it, some of you may not have seen it. We went to work and we documented our activities in what was taking place in Abaco. And we have prepared a documentary, which was, we were aided.
In terms of structural rebuild.
We were aided by one of the local radio stations in producing this. So it shows you a lot of what had taken place, and even testimonies. That's our chairman, Brian Knowles, who was speaking there. And so the link, I'll share the link in the chat group if you haven't seen it as yet. And you could take a look and listen to the testimonies of the homeowners and others throughout the way. And it showcases our projects. So that pretty much covers where we are. Our work continues, and I can't overemphasize how important it is to ensure that you continue to showcase what you are doing in your various islands. Again, the trauma, the stress is high. The desire of the team remains. We are committed as a unit, and so that is what you've got. So this is one of the homeowners who had to be transferred to Eleuthera after the storm. So the One Eleuthera Foundation took care of her, and we were able to go in and lend support and return her and her children back to their homesteads. So that brings to conclusion my presentation, lest there be anything that I can assist you with. I believe I would have covered it. And again, I offer my gratitude to John, Susan, IPP, Dwayne Wallace, as well as Mike Terrelong, and even Phil for what he had done in supporting us from DNA RAG. And the work continues. And so anyone wanting to continue to contribute to us, please do so. We have more than $6 million worth of projects that we engaged in. And we find the funds, the projects are sitting there waiting for us to get done. And we are talking to 1 or 2 clubs right now. We were contacted by the Rotary Club of St. Petersburg very recently, wanting to come down and share in with the work that we are doing down there. So, Mr. Moderator, I shan't take any more of your time. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ken. I know there are lots of questions already, and there are lots more to come, right? We're going to get to them. But you mentioned PDG Phil, and I can't think of somebody who has spent more than hundreds and hundreds of hours over years supporting our districts in the Caribbean. From the DNA RAG, he has genetic links to the Caribbean, he says, but he's been a tremendous help for us. So I'd like to ask PDG Phil Lustig, the Vice Chair of the DNA RAG, to speak to us briefly.
Thank you, Mike. And I'd like to, let me see if I can figure out this thing. Hold on a second. I'd like to, before I start, I'd like to acknowledge a few people that I've seen on here, some old friends and some doing some protocol stuff. Past District Governor Leslie Harry Paul from 7030, past Governor Felix and Rupert from your district, Mike. Past Governor Magda Baggett from 7730, who's one of our board members. She's our secretary of the RAG. And the guy who gets the distance award tonight is Alan Chen, who's on the call from Taiwan, and he's one of our directors. So I just, you know,
thank you, Phil.
Good morning.
And I do want to, if I can get this thing going here. I wanted to, can you see what are you seeing? You seeing, which screen are you seeing, Mike?
With other districts, Phil.
I'm sorry?
I'm seeing your notes screen. I'm seeing your notes screen.
I don't want to see the note screen. All right, I'll do away with that.
Share again.
Yeah, hold on. Stop share and share. Share screen. Maybe this one. I don't know. Let me just back out of this for a second. We'll go to 2. Okay. If I can find the share screen thing. Sorry, guys. I'm not a technological wizard.
Take your time.
All right. Share screen. And number 2. If I can find 2. Wait a minute.
DNA rag, we have you. We have.
All right, let me just use this screen then. We'll go back over here. I don't want that. I want this. I want screen 1. Okay. What we at DNA Reg, what we offer. Wow, I'm not sure why I'm seeing what I'm seeing here.
I've seen it.
I want to go to this. Do you see communications venue?
We're not seeing any sharing at the moment.
No. Okay. Share screen 1. Okay.
Something's coming up. Great. We've seen it.
Okay. What we offer to clubs and districts around the world is a communication venue. We offer the ability for Rotarians, clubs, and districts to communicate with other districts, with the zone, and with Rotary International. And one of the things that we've been able to do over the years, and I know you guys are very familiar with this, but we offer financial assistance in that we have a 501c3, which is a vehicle in the United States that allows people to make contributions on a charitable basis and get a tax break. And so over the years, we've sent a bunch of money. I know during Irma Maria, we sent $869,000 to 7020. I'm not sure what the number is with Dorian, but I just wrote checks today for $16,000. Phil Cumming asked me to send 2 checks, one for a deposit on a Bobcat and one for a water tanker. Those will be coming out soon. But we also assist with communicating financial needs around the world. We help with guidance in preparing global grants and helping find global grant partners. But one of the major things that we're able to do, and again, hats off to Mike Terrelong, since Irma Maria, we've been using the WhatsApp application that Michael developed, and I think it's in, I don't know, the 75th iteration, Mike, whatever it is. But this is a project management tool that allows us to have incredible transparency. There was I noticed a note in the chat box that there was some concern because what AG Ken was showing divulged some personal information, but there are different levels of security, just like there are with Club Runner and DACDB. And so what Ken gets to see isn't what I might get to see. Or when for example, when the Office of the Controller of Currency calls the bank and says, "Why are you sending all this money to the Caribbean? Are you buying drugs?" I'm able to take the computer to the bank and show them, with photographs and with documented reports, exactly what has been done with each and every project and what every wire that we have sent or every check that we have written is about. We're very, very strong with preparedness, and this webinar is part of that. One of the things that we didn't talk about this evening was personal preparedness, making sure you have your own personal plan. And I know, and you guys in the Bahamas are brutally aware of what happens if you're not prepared when you go into your attic and there's sea surge. You know, I was familiar when I was in Pennsylvania. One of my employees was a volunteer firefighter, and I was out one night and he called me and he was distraught because a parent had lost his life running back into a house to rescue his children who were already out of the house because they didn't have a plan for a place to gather. You know, so that kind of planning is just so critical. We've done ready conferences in the past. We're probably going to do more of those. And the templates for disaster planning are available on our website. We help find partners, whether it's Disaster Aid International, and I saw past District Governor Arthur Hodge on here before. He's one of the directors of DNA RAG. I'm sorry, of Disaster Aid International, Water Box, Water Survival Box, Team Rubicon, Shelter Box. We partner with all of those folks, and we can help clubs and districts and Rotarians in your district find those resources. And where we've helped, Bob and I work together on, you know, in Rotary, if it doesn't have an acronym, it probably doesn't exist. And Bob and I worked on the NERI DAF committee, which I think stood for Nepal and Emergency Relief Initiative, the Donor Advised Fund Committee. And we're still doing work in Nepal right now. We've worked in the Bahamas, as you know, with the Virgin Islands, St. Vincent. I was in communication today with a club president in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. 3 weeks ago, we had a meeting. One of our directors put together a meeting of 31 district governors in Brazil to put together a conference of making sure that the district governors all are on page for setting up their districts with a district disaster committee, trying to get district club disaster committees with club chairs, and so that's the kind of stuff we're doing, and we're here to help you. DNARAG.com, and I don't think there's a lot more for me to add. If you have any questions, I'm available. It's phil.lustig3@gmail.com. Mike, back to you.
Thank you, Phil. I think there are going to be lots of questions, but we're going to take one more speaker first, and then we'll get to general questions and answers. We've had a lot of questions from Rotarians asking about how they can improve themselves professionally, any personal development opportunities in disaster management. And I think we have no better expert than PGG Stephen Rampu from 7030 to speak to us on our opportunities there. Certainly, PGG Stephen, with their responsibility for Trinidad and other things, you're well placed to speak on this point. Let's hear from you, PGG Stephen.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening, guys. So we're going to try and share my screen. Good. You guys see this? Yeah? District, you guys are seeing District 7030, 7030.
Yes. Yep. Go ahead.
All right. So I just want to say a quick hello about Phil, and of course my past chairman of the Caribbean Partnership, Arthur, was around. I saw Leslie Harry Paul, one of my district governor mentors, and Leslie Ramdani, also a member of the ex-com of the Caribbean Partnership, of which I now chair. And of course, I must say a special hello to Paul Saunders. I saw Paul Saunders in the chat, and Paul is, I think he's with the Caribbean Development Bank now, but I know Paul was one of the chief executive officers of the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management before me. I took the post many years after Paul. Paul set the stage really for disaster risk reduction in the Caribbean, in Trinidad. So if Paul is around, I saw he's muted and His video is not there, but I'm hoping that he is there, of course. I saw Roger Bose is on the chat and some of my Rotarians from my club. So, hi, Paul. Hi, Paul. So guys, one of the things is that there was a beautiful article in the International Journal of Disaster Risk Reduction in 2014 by if I see here, it's Shrivan Kelman, in which they looked at the benefits of mitigation. That is disaster preparedness in terms of mitigation, both structural and non-structural mitigation. Many years ago, World Bank had said that for every $1 invested in disaster risk reduction, there's a return in investment of $7 US. They don't tend to use that again. We try not to use that again because, you know, we couldn't back it up with any sort of study that actually said that that was good figures from the World Bank. But if you look at Kelman's article and Shriv's article in 2014 in the International Journal, and you look at some of the work done by FEMA, you will see that clearly there's a very good return on investment in terms of disaster risk reduction programs, mitigation programs. Now, I do apologize for coming on a bit late because I had some internet issues, but clearly from what I was hearing from Ken and some of the other, some of the other speakers who would have spoken, and of course from Phil, you can see that in our beautiful response that we have as Rotarians throughout the Caribbean, because we are pretty good at it actually. One of the things that we found when we were at the table at the United Nations in developing the Sendai strategy is that CDEMA, which was the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency coming out of Barbados, represented all the CARICOM member states in terms of disaster risk reduction. And what we found is that we were at least years ahead in what we were doing in the Caribbean in terms of preparedness, in terms of getting our communities more resilient. And when we sat at the table, whilst we was reviewing the Hyogo framework, and we developed the Sendai strategy out of Japan in 2015, we found that based on the evidence that we were getting, is that if we focus a lot more on mitigation programs and preparedness, yes, we have to respond and we have to get the shelter box and we have to get out our monies and we have to get the people there. We have to get the helicopters and the water. Of course, we're going to have to do that, you know, as long as we live. And we're going to have to do that in the future because of what climate change is doing to us, especially in our small island states. So we recognize the need for response. But what we have said as the scientists involved and the experts, and Paul will know this, is that we need to put mitigation, structural and non-structural mitigation, as we go out to do our relief programs. So that you would find that Rotary has been doing that quite a lot, in that we encouraged, for example, when a guy's roof is blown off, that when we go and we fix his roof, that we also put in hurricane straps in the roof so that it prevents us spending more money every time it comes around. Nowadays, as you know, the biggest cost we have as a hazard in the whole of the Caribbean is flooding, sea level rise and flooding. And this street flooding is because we're developing so much. We're building a lot of homes, and a lot of times our building codes are not allowing us the flexibility of only putting 33% of your property covered with roofs. You would find that in a lot of the Caribbean islands, because of economic reasons and of course rental and all of these reasons, people are putting galvanized buildings, you know, throughout almost the entire lot of land that they have, whereas most building codes only allow 33% coverage, and a lot of that water is falling onto the ground, and we're having flooding in our streets. So what I'm trying to say then is that Rotarians have a very unique opportunity in terms of understanding this philosophy as we go forward. And I think that if we could benefit by some of the training that we have in terms of getting Rotarians themselves to be leaders and to inculcate that philosophy, right, into what we are doing in terms of the worldwide metrics that we have developed in monitoring countries' deliverables, in terms of monitoring the indicators of performance for disaster risk reduction implementation in the UN member states as well as the CARICOM member states. We can actually standardize those, and Rotary have a very important role in achieving those deliverables, because we have our foot, our feet, our hands in the communities. And we have our partners in service, like the community cause, Interact, Rotaract, and some of the community leaders. We are already engaging with them as we go and we do our very efficient response programs. So what we have to do is we have to teach Rotarian leaders in the clubs to actually engage the community leaders. Of course, the governments play a role, but as you know, there's a lot of politics in disaster risk reduction, like many things else, and not just in the Caribbean, all over the world. So that we have to be careful that our humanitarian relief programs are following the guidelines of United Nations Humanitarian Relief and Response Guidelines. Yes. So we want to create a risk-based approach to all hazard approach, not just for flooding and earthquakes, but for the meteors and whatever it is. In other words, it's just not the risk that we have, because we don't know when we're going to have that black swan emergency. I mean, look at COVID. We never anticipated COVID, but COVID is actually changing the way we look at things. Yeah. So COVID could be this. So we knew we were going to get a pandemic, but we just didn't know when. The other thing is that we mentioned it. I see that, DNA RAG does have the funding, so that we have a lot of community toolkits that we don't have to reinvent. Paul would notice CDP has helped a lot of us in the Caribbean to develop these community toolkits, these resiliency toolkits for building and assisting, for example, local legislation, model legislations. I was part of the process of developing model legislation for disaster risk reduction. So we have a lot of those already done. We paid thousands of US dollars, and we had a lot of governments who came in and they were sponsoring money to actually develop these toolkits. So we have them. So what we just want to do is to train Rotarians to see if we could utilize these already made toolkits for the Caribbean communities to assist with this building of the resiliences. Some of the stakeholders that we work with, we have Paul again from CDB, we have Red Cross, we have UNDP, we have UN OCHA, US State Department, US Southcom. We work with these people. JICA has spent a lot of money, the Japanese government, in terms of developing a lot of these funding toolkits for communities, for example, coastal communities, resiliency building. So Rotarians can identify these, and a lot of these big global donors are asking very good institutions like Rotary, which has very good transparent financials, etc., that they are the ones to take the responsibility within the community. So if we can develop some degree of understanding within our Rotary community in terms of training and understanding how we can access some of these donors and what are the protocols and processes through the diplomatic, as well as in each of our sovereign nations, how we can access that through our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, etc. It can actually ease up some of our long-term funding in terms of creating a more resilient community by focusing a lot on structural and non-structural mitigation. Right? Also, very important is the toolkits. A lot of us, as you know, in Bahamas, we have Dominica, we have flooding in Trinidad, a lot of these things. Even we have some migration from Venezuela, which is causing a very big social impact in our country right now with the movement of over 100,000 Venezuelans into Trinidad. All of these things are happening as we speak. And therefore, in understanding how we are going to go in a street or village, a Rotary Club can actually do what is called a vulnerability capacity assessment using some of our partners. It's a simple tool. Red Cross and the International Red Cross Organization had a VCA tool, right? What we need to do is the heads to actually get that tool done within a village. So within a village, Rotary clubs can have a pulse on, for example, who has a wheelchair, who was knocked down by a car, who is pregnant today, how many old people have got strokes, how many houses are flat and they have the electricity on the ground floor. Now, these are very important because when you are planning humanitarian relief, you know right away that in some of your particular villages, which are actually covered by a Rotary Club or a Rotaract Club, that you can actually say, well, look, I have 400 dwellings. Out of those, I have 100 that has flooding. I have 65 people who are very, very vulnerable people. I have 5 pregnant women. This is the kind of thing that the VCA will do. So it allows us to focus our resources so that when Rotary organizations send money into particular countries, you have a better specific approach to it. Setting up and maintaining an early warning system, most of our governments have that in place. But the problem is, we are not able to actually translate that into a community and house level. Cuba has a wonderful model. so that if we can send some of our Rotarians to Cuba, for example, and to look at what they have been doing in terms of those early warning points. In other words, then community contacts, such as sport group leaders and villagers who live next to rivers, who know when the water reaches a certain level by the truth, that it is going to flood. Because I don't know that, Ken doesn't know that, Phil doesn't know that, the fireman doesn't know that, the prime minister doesn't know that, but he knows that because when he sees that water there, he knows that. So these are the kind of people that we have to engage even before the flood comes, and the flood will come. So this is some of the training that we want to introduce, and I'm going to wrap up because, you know, Mike, I'm taking a lot of time, but basically this is what we're talking about in terms of training Rotarians to understand the cost benefit analysis, and Rotary strategic plan is quite clear. We want you to create high impact programs that are sustainable and makes a difference in your communities. Yes, we can give people water, we have to do that. But what we need to do is prevent them from getting that water in the first place as much as possible. And this is where we get $7 return of our investment. Or if you get that article from these guys in 2014 at the International Journal for Disaster Relief, you will see exactly how good it is to put more money in mitigation. So if DNA RAG and some of the Rotary clubs can spend about 60% of their money, right, in terms of mitigation programs in our communities, we as Rotarians would make a difference as we go forward. Training Rotarians, partners, and we talked about that. And CERT teams. This is a very simple program. And we can actually do CERT team training online right now. And I'll be happy to deal with this. We have some members of the Caribbean Partnership here. The Caribbean Partnership is a very nice organization within the zones 33 and 34. We don't focus on disaster response at all, but we can focus on training, and we can focus on linkages between key leaders in risk reduction in the areas of the eastern seaboard of the United States, as well as the Caribbean as a whole. So in other words, then we become a facilitator of training, and we can actually offer this training as early as next week if you want, in some of the programs that I'm just going to show you here now before I wrap up. How to perform a tabletop simulation exercise. It sounds very simple, but guys, most of you all who have done it, like Ken, Paul, Michael, most of us who have done it, you will realize it is very stressful, and it actually works. And you can actually go into communities that are affected by flooding or whatever, and actually run this in a school or a community center, and bring some of the key persons in that area who make the decisions and actually run that. We want to teach you how to do it. It's not something that you could go and read and look on YouTube and know how to do it. We can do it. Paul Saunders was a past CEO. Ken, most of you guys could help us with that. We could just get a quick trainer thing, and we can do it online. So that could happen as soon as possible. We don't need any rocket science for that. That is easy. We already see that the NRA can help us develop some plans within the communities. That is something that we can get the funding from them once we can account for it and show how the money is going to be used. Right? The CERT teams, as I said, is easy. Right? What I did when I was the CEO of ODPM is that we got government funding, and we created over 4,000 bags or packs, and we gave it to our municipalities to give out to the persons who are actually becoming CERT trained. We could do that. Some of the money that we are putting towards donations, and then when a disaster occurs, if we can create these CERT bags with all the key things, Rotary clubs and Rotaract clubs can be trained to go, and we can train CERT teams within the communities that are high risk. And we can give out those bags and present them, but not just public relations, but it also helps Rotary as well into sharing Rotary. Of course, those two other things is what I spoke to about. These are some of the courses that we are offering. What I have here, for example, is let me see if I can show you this. Right. This is a course that I run in University of Trinidad and Tobago. It's called Basic Community Emergency Response Training. Right. It's actually a course that, they charge there, but as I said, I run this course, so we can adapt this to Rotary. It doesn't have to be a generic. It doesn't have to be something that is not generic. It could be done through Rotary. This is another one I do called Introduction to Disaster Risk Management at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. Right. It's a 16-hour course, but we have adapted it now for virtual. And it allows people to understand a lot of what I was just speaking about is, of course, that we could do online, right? And again, it can happen as soon as we need it, right? So we have that. We have this one, crisis communication management. Is a very, very good course that we run, right? Because basically it's a lot to try to work with the key agencies in the area. Let's see, we have one more. Right. This is a very important one called Introduction to Mass Casualty Management. It happens when there are quite a lot of emergencies that might occur, and we can teach you how those emergencies are dealt with before they reach the hospital. One of the biggest problems we have in the Caribbean and many other developed countries is that you have 20 people in an accident and the ambulances take the 20 people and take them straight to the hospital. So you move the disaster from the field and you take it straight into the hospital and you overwhelm the resources. And you are there with your little child with asthma who dies because they have moved 20 people from the field and it bugs up the emergency department. And those 20 people could have been treated in a school or a church. Understand? So this is something that is very, very important as we go forward. So guys, I, with some of my colleagues in Rotary, and we have been running these courses. Myself with the University of Trinidad and Tobago, there's a fee for it if you want to get an accredited certificate. But if you just want to have some orientation webinars, I know DNA RAG supports this. As I said, I'm introducing the Caribbean Partnership as a facilitator where we can create the webinar pages and we can run those every 2 Mondays in a month, right? And people can log on. We have 160 something people here in this chat alone, right? We can actually run some of those courses and give you a participation certificate. But if you want to get an accredited certificate, we can run the courses through the University of Trinidad and Tobago, which is accredited, right? So again, Michael, that is, in a nutshell what I've had to say this evening. Thanks very much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you so much, PDG Stephen. You've really hit the spot, and I know you've stimulated all our interest in things. We've had a wonderful evening. We've had a number of presenters. We are open for question and answer now. And I know there's so much here to discuss. Could we take your questions now? Anyone wishing to ask?
Mike.
Yes.
Mike.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mike. There was a question that was asked earlier by a young man, which had to be cut short because of the presentation. I think it was by Strawn. Why not deal with this question? Because communication is most critical in any disaster at all. And I believe that he was asking something along that line. The communication breaking down.
All right, thank you. Let me try to do that. The question was, how do we communicate in a disaster? And the answer is in any way we can, right? We have used satellite phones. We use the cell systems. A lot of the contact between club members are, if I live near you and I know how to walk over to your house, I communicate that way. But one of the key things the district tries to do is to find out what's the best way in the communication to communicate in this situation. I remember very much PDG Rupert after Irma, and he could communicate via hotspot on a particular day of the week, and we made sure that we could be there to speak with him. But a disaster takes down everything. So there's no set way, and you can't plan on a particular way like a cell phone or a landline or what have you. You have to really be creative, right? So we use all the methods to communicate. I'm not too sure if that has answered this question.
Yes. Thank you for that. That was my question. Sorry. That was my question. And that's Kenneth again. That was my question. And the reason why I asked that question is because we need to establish a disaster manual, I think, and establish the different forms of communication that we can use. And I'm happy that you said if we could at least have a satellite for every country and the persons that you can reach in that country, you could have that in a manual, so everybody knows, okay, a disaster is approaching. This is what kicks off. This is what. So that's why I threw that question. If we can establish something for the future.
Mike.
Go ahead, Ken.
Okay, I'm hearing that good question that you asked, Kenneth, which was reinforced by Bob. Having gone through those experiences with losing communications, and I can tell you that based on our experiences coming out of Abaco and out of Grand Bahama, the most significant in technology got bashed and battered. Claude mentioned something that was very important earlier. During his presentation, he spoke to this issue of Rotarians attempting at sometimes to be the first responders. Align yourself with those agencies that have the expertise, and Aaron also mentioned this, that has the expertise, such as your firefighters, your law enforcement. We've had that challenge. I've been in law enforcement 36 years now, and I have gone through many storms, many of major disasters. And I can tell you communication, as is being said here, will fail you in some form or the other. So making sure that you're speaking about, Ken, you're talking about a manual. If that manual is just on paper and it's too laborious and cumbersome, it becomes problematic for the persons whom you're trying to reach. So try to keep it simple and get the information out. That illustration given with respect to the father going back into the house trying to find his family, those points of rendezvous, get to understand that. Small little practice session, alert your families, talk about it during your club meetings and so forth. Make sure that those points are reinforced. And I like the illustrations and the programs that PDG Stephen is speaking about, and certainly have an interest from this end. So just communications will fail you. Gone through a number of that in Grand Bahama and Freeport. I had a cousin who just died just recently, went through Hurricane Dorian. He was the EMS technician responsible for Grand Bahama. And in the middle of the storm, he was caught in East End Grand Bahama. And he had to set up triage in a 2-story house. When the ambulance collapsed, he had several injured persons. He had to develop a triage in the middle of the storm in somebody's house as they navigate through the storm along with other rescuers, pulling persons to safety in waters that were over 15 feet deep in some cases. So it will fail for one reason or the other.
Hey, Mike.
I see Tony Brooks has, right? Phil, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back on the communication. 16 years ago, I think it was 2005, Rotary established or deployed a network of satellite phones in 70-20, and I believe some in 70-30. They were absolutely critical in 2010 during the earthquake, and Claude can speak to that because the entire infrastructure in Haiti, well, in Port-au-Prince anyway, disappeared. We were able to communicate with them the day of the earthquake. So unfortunately, that the technology we had then has been it's no longer any good, but satellite phones are still good. They're very expensive, and if there's a way to fund that, that would probably be a really great thing to have on an island by island basis. But again, it's a funding issue.
Right. And we should also think of the ham radio operators and the ham clubs in our area to make contact with them, because they're a great resource for communication.
Yeah, there's a Rotary fellowship called ROAR, which is has to do with the ham operators.
I see Brooke Tony, or is it Tony Brook has a question. Tony, you'd like to go ahead and ask a question?
Hi, sure. Hi, good evening, everyone. And thank you again for doing this. This has been so insightful. I'm from the Rotaract Central Port of Spain in Trinidad and Tobago. I have a couple of questions. The first one is, how do we create a national plan, a national disaster management plan? Because I've noticed from AD Ken's experience, it was a national effort. So how can we go about doing that in our country? The second question is directed towards PDG Phil. How can we join the disaster network of assistance? The third question, sorry, I have quite a few, is directed towards AD Ken. What preparations do you say as a small group can we have for the masses? And the last question is directed towards Mr. Stephen Ramroop. How can we join the training sessions for UTT? Thank you.
The first question again, or does anybody want to respond?
Yeah.
I'd just like to say that, is it Tony? That's right.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Great. Rotaract, Tony, yes, if you contact Crystal, I think she's involved in the Rotaract. She was a past president of the Santa Ana South Rotary Club, Rotaract Club. They have developed a national plan for Rotaract. And in Trinidad, we do have a national plan for Rotary, and we have a district disaster plan for 7030 for disaster preparedness. So your Rotaract communications will allow you to look at that plan, because it's easily shared. I think you need to contact Crystal. If not, I would get to her and ask if she could send it to you guys. And as I said, we just have to wait on a little bit of approvals from my co-chair, David Edwards, as well as our district governor, Sonia. Once we get those, we're going to start the training sessions in association with our district training team. As you know, there is a district training program. So we're hoping to get in that program in a way that we don't pull the rug from anyone who is responsible for training. And yes, the training will be done in webinars right now as we virtual, and it will be advertised to the district, hopefully through the district training team. So it falls under the district training. Right? However, if individual Rotaract clubs require training and you bring members of the community, which I'm hoping is a good way to go, which for all the Rotaract clubs who might be on, and all the Rotary clubs as well, in both districts, 7020, 7030, if you can have a webinar, you could bring members of your community right away in the next week or two, right? Arrange a session, just like Mike organized this year. Get the people to join on at a particular time. We'll send the outline and the lesson plan, which I just showed you in brief. And we can run these as soon as possible. It's really easy. So I'm just, with your question, I'm extending it to everyone, because we need to get the training done very quickly so that we can get everybody on the same page, so to speak. A lot of the questions that came out in terms of crisis communication, in terms of what we call incident management, who speaks to who during a disaster and when. All of these things are very important. And any one of the soldiers here, any one of the law enforcement officers here who are here now, as you can say, he was a law enforcement or is a law enforcement, or he will fully understand what that incident management system is and how it saves lives and prevents chaos. So all of those are training programs that we could run as soon as possible, especially for Rotaractors and interactors, because these are the people that we want to engage our community.
And I think working with your district disaster preparedness team, those are great ideas and great efforts to organize as a district effort with multiple clubs.
Mike.
Please go ahead, Phil.
Yeah. Tony, if you can see the screen, this is dnarag.com right over here on the right-hand side. It says membership. Click on that. Be able to join us.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, I see Rotarian Dormo Harrison from Portmore in Jamaica has a question. Dormo, please go ahead.
It's not so much a question, it's more endorsing what AG Ken mentioned, that there's the avenue for us to partner with entities, organizations that are already quite competent in the training and management of disasters. I happen to be the vice president of Jamaica Red Cross, and I've brought that competence to bear on the Portmore, So I don't need to reinvent the wheel, because I just ask them to come and do for us what they are already competent at doing.
Thank you very much for raising that point, Dom. In our advice to clubs is know your local responders, know your local Red Cross, your local Salvation Army, know the people in your community, establish those communications beforehand so they know you. Don't try and build your disaster plan by yourself. Seek allies with it. So very good point. Next to ask a question, Siobhan Johnson from the Rotary Club of East Nassau has a question. Siobhan, you'd like to go ahead?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Just a quick question. I just wanted to know, I'm not sure who's the best person to answer. Have there been any apps perhaps pursued or developed by Rotary for disaster management in terms of accounting for people, communicating? I know that sometimes when other telecommunication paths fail, the major ones, some apps are still working. So I just wanted to know if there was any apps that you're aware of that have been developed by Rotary for any form of disaster management. Sure. Thank you.
With the assistance of DNA RAG and in 7020 and also to be used in 7030, have developed an app for the business processes that we manage as a district. It's simply looking at the things we're trying to manage and creating the tools for that. It runs on a web environment, it runs on Android, iOS, it works disconnected. That's how PDG Rupert could have his data and come once a week and synchronize it. So we have built some, and we're very much open to looking at others and getting other ideas and doing more in that area.
Siobhan,
you saw what AG Ken did on these hundreds of projects. And I know he's keeping over 80-odd pieces of information, at least on each project. That requires an app and the tools for that.
Siobhan, one of the things that would occur to me is that in the event of an extreme disaster, whether it be an earthquake, a volcano, or a really, really serious hurricane, cyclone, you might not have available to you apps, okay? And I think back to what Arno talks about, where you walk to your neighbor's house, okay? And that may sound pretty antiquated. It may sound really almost romantic, okay? But if you don't have any telecommunication, you don't have any electricity, all the apps in the world aren't going to help you. So there are some resources available on our website and elsewhere that, like the telephone tree, that you can develop. And if you have that downloaded prior, so that you know who you can reach, or who's within walking distance or who's not, and it's different. And one of the things that I spoke about the other evening at another meeting is, whilst there's a template available, make sure that you customize whatever plan you have for your club, because every club is different. If I had to walk to some member of my club, I'd be walking for hours, because I live 20 miles from where our club meets. So it would take me a little while to get there. And I see Rupert's under his tree again. But that I don't know of a specific app that that's been developed within Rotary to track people, Siobhan. I really don't think that's happened yet.
Okay,
Mike, you're
thank you.
muted. Mike, you're muted. You're talking, you're muted, Mike.
I see PP, Past President Colonel Desmond Hutchinson from Spanish Town has a question. Past President Desmond. Maybe not. Okay, maybe not. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Mike, I just want to say that having been at the CEO of the National Disaster Agency in Trinidad, and we work very closely with the military. And what Phil was saying, when everything else fails, we use the ham radio system, which is pretty robust. So one of the things that we have in our disaster system, now we have a lot of Rotarians, for example, who actually are ham members or React members or whatever, and they are part of our clubs, and we have built that resiliency within the system. One of the things that, as Phil was saying, there comes a time when you have to get to the point. So hopefully with the training, we can actually train persons within the communities with Rotary to actually know where their incident command centers are, where their soldiers are, where their firemen are. Because what we do is that, as you know, the military drops these guys with these satellite systems. We at ODPM in Trinidad have bought about 4 of them, so that even if things are down, you can actually go into an area, put the satellite on a truck. We have these mobile vehicles, and then we can communicate. And that system also allows, if you have phone apps or anything within that radio system, that we can send messaging in that area, in a geo-specific area, we can actually send messaging using that system, which is obviously, the military has, the technology is there. So they use that, in these remote areas right now in the deserts and all of these things. So they can actually create that little system. So just to say that it is the most important thing is, if you have that system in a country where your military can actually be in your disaster areas, and once you can get to the church where that soldier is with that system, then you can get to Bahama, so you can get to Mike, or you can get to Ken, you can get to Barry and Bahama. In other words, then once you have that interface, the app that we have is only being used by FEMA right now, and we use it in some of our national immunization programs in India. For some of us who would have gone across, there is an app that we use, and it has been used by the WHO in a lot of those communities for immunization, where when we go into these villages, we can actually use a system on your phone, which can actually log on the information and send it to a central database once you have internet. So there are systems there, but it's just as we haven't really adapted it to Rotary. And just a final comment. I know one of the things that you understand, most of us go to courses, we did first aid courses. And one of the things as a facilitator, even as a person who was doing a course as a young doctor, I remember Red Cross coming to do a first aid course, for doctors. And when I do courses for nurses and children and students and university graduates, we have to tailor the course for each one of the population. It's not a straight course. So that's one of the things that we have to understand, that what we are offering in training that we are doing is we tailor the course specific for the audience, so that Rotary, we have a specific communication system, we have a specific ideology, and therefore when we are going to be doing the training, we would actually focus the training for how Rotary and Rotarians and Rotaractors and interactors and community core members can get involved in the actual training. And it's, as I said, you have to adapt. You have to adapt the lesson plans. So one of the things about training, it doesn't make sense doing a basic first aid course, which is offered to every Dick and Harry. Because if you do it for a doctor and a nurse, it's 2 different things. So I'm just saying, training is training, but we have to be careful. And I think that is what we're trying to tell you here now.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Jacqueline Halliger, who's really a tower of strength to building the District 7020 Disaster Program of the Year. Jackie, would you like to give us some comments and help us sum up this evening?
And I know it's getting late. Good evening, everyone. So I definitely won't be long. I just want to say that there's a lot of resources out there in terms of training, in terms of educating yourselves, that you can access. But I just want to say that one of the first things that we want to do is take care of our families. I know we're talking about clubs right now, but we want to ensure that first and foremost that we're taking care of our families and taking care of, and then we can take care of everyone else. So it's very important that we ensure that we are taken care of. One of the things I enjoyed about this evening is the mere fact that we had real life experiences talking tonight. District 7020, I think, is at the forefront of dealing with disasters. Phil, Mike, all of the others. We have come together from Bahamas, Haiti, the Virgin Islands, the British Virgin Islands. All of us has come together one way or another in terms of figuring out how to deal and assist each other when it comes to disaster. PDG Rupert was one of the at the forefront when Maria and Irma hit the Virgin Islands, and we tried to figure out how to assist our neighboring islands. And we came up with a plan and ensure that we're able to assist them, meaning provide disaster relief at the forefront. One of the things that we do, DNA RAG, is we look at the latter part of the disaster. How do we strengthen? But I think what's important for us is to identify how we can provide immediate relief. And that's one of the things I think Ken spoke about, how you provided immediate relief to ensure that people get water, food, all the necessities that they need. So I'm going to close by, I don't want to prolong it. I know, like I said, it's getting late, but I just want to say that I think it was a fantabulous evening. I think we touched on every aspect, but one of the things that's important is that we dealt with real life experiences and showed how we can deal with them. So I want to say thank you. And there are resources out there that, again, that we can tap into for further training and information for us to strengthen ourselves and our families and our clubs. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you for all you have done. You're a tower of strength and knowledge and expertise. And we very much appreciate your contributions.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions, or could we wrap up tonight? I think we've had a wonderful night.
Michael, Michael, I thought you were going to sing happy birthday to Amanda.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Today is Amanda's birthday, and I think DG had to leave early.
He's here. He's still here.
Oh, DG. Right. Gosh, my voice is not a good birthday voice. Who can lead us in singing happy birthday to Amanda?
I don't think we need to do that. Tell her happy birthday.
Just say happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Mike, just before you pull away from here, I say this because it's important coming out of one incident we had several years ago. We must, notwithstanding these disasters that happen, understanding the environment that we are living in, both in the Northern and the Southern Caribbean. Cruise ships and other vessels traverse our terrains, and those natural disasters can occur within the waterways that is far away from the land. But we do have migration, boats colliding. We had one many years ago. I remember working during the course of the night, and a call came in that 2 of the ferries had collided and 300 persons were drowned. Of course, the whole island woke up, and obviously that created some issues. So just have that in the back of your thoughts also, that these are all considered. And just remember, as was reiterated throughout this presentation, we are the support arm. Allow those who are trained to take on the responsibilities of approaching the issues in the first instance, deal with that, and we provide support to them, that interaction with them, and that helps us to help them as that support arm to get the work done and be the runners and facilitators for the stuff that they need where they are void in the resources. We could have that reach globally to get the resources that they need to help each and every one of our communities. So thank you. Appreciate being a part of this session this evening.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ken. I'd like to thank everyone for participating this evening. The District 7020 Disaster Preparedness Team, our great friends of DNRAG, all of you, your Rotaractors and Rotarians concerned about disasters. Very much glad to see Alan Chen from all the way from Taiwan, from DNRAG with us. Special thanks to District Rotaract Representative Pierre Louis, Mackinson Pierre Louis, Jimmy, our interpreter, District Secretary Anjali Manik. You've been fantastic. Thank you very much. Let's do it again soon. Thank you very much and have a good night.